Hey, everybody. Thanks so much for joining me today on the So She Did podcast. Today, I am joined by Erin Gregor. Erin is a serial entrepreneur. She is the CEO of ErinGregor.com, and she is also the co founder of Innovative Media Solutions. Erin has started and successfully sold a number of businesses. And the reason that I've invited her to be on the show today is because we're talking about overcoming difficult circumstances, about going through trying times, and how we can embrace our passions and still find success in the middle of sometimes what can be really challenging situations. So, Erin, welcome so much to the show. I'm very excited to have you here. Tell me a little bit about yourself and your story, just to give us some background.
Yeah, absolutely. So I am what you'd call an accidental entrepreneur. I don't have a cool story of selling lemonade when I was 5 or anything like that, but I did grow up on a farm, so knew hard work. That's what we worked a lot. And long story short, I read Rich Dad Poor Dad. I had a great job at Accenture, but it really changed my perspective on, wait a minute, the 3% raise, isn't that awesome? And so I started in real estate and just started investing, doing long-term property buys and rentals. And then through that, ended up Googling and literally Googling my way to our first business. I moved to the Dallas area. My husband was going to school at UNT working on a PhD. And in the summer, he didn't want to go work a retail job. So we started what we thought was just going to be a fun little pet sitting business, and ended up growing to 12 full-time employees. We bought out several competitors. And business, it was easy-ish. I don't want to call it easy because obviously we worked really hard. There were, difficult times through it, but it really was, I know we're going to talk about this, but a passion. We loved what we did, and it just was a bonus that we made money doing it, right? Even though there were some hard times. So through that, just started, building other businesses, selling some. And then, do you want me to get into 2017 yet, or do we want to jump there?
Absolutely. Go right ahead.
Okay, because I know we're talking about hard times, and just this was I got cocky. I mean, I completely got cocky. I looked back on my previous businesses, and I'm like, well, you know what? Let's do that. And starting, I figured I kind of knew what I needed to know, and instead of it being like, well, it's going to take steps A, B, C, D to get there, I was like, I got this. I'm just going to go from A to D because I've earned the right to be the exception to the rule, right?
Got it. Mm-hmm.
So I started an event business. I'm like, I'm going to do a big event. This is going to be fun. I'm going to do a big event. And in true Erin style, I was going to go big. I was going to do this very quickly. First year ended up being very difficult, but turning out okay. And so the second year, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to go bigger. I booked Robert Herjavec of Shark Tank. We got a bigger venue. We had great sponsors, but there was definitely a mismatch into money coming in versus money going out. Mm-hmm. And it was, in addition to that, I had a real estate deal going extremely south on me. So I was hemorrhaging money. And my mental place to be in a good place is savings going up, debt going down. And when it's opposite, it created a very horrible spiral that I had a very hard time getting out of. Mm-hmm. And it's funny. It's like looking back on it, I had these successes, but I think I always felt like a fraud. Like it kind of was an accident. It wasn't because I was great at, you know what I'm saying? Like it was like always I was waiting for the justification that I didn't know what I was doing, right? Like the ha ha ha, you can't fool anybody anymore. Yeah. And so when it was all happening, it was just like I'd forgotten about what I had done before. I had forgotten that I actually, pulled through. It was a path. It was the bumpiest path I've ever been on. And
so back to the beginning. When did you first know that you wanted to start a business as opposed to working for someone else?
Yeah, and it was, so Rich Dad Poor Dad changed my mindset of ownership. And so I didn't look at it. That's kind of when the wheels started turning. However, it was owning stocks. It was owning real estate. Never really, but I'd always work corporate. It was when I moved here, I always had the ideas, but I never followed through with them. so I guess it was always there, but I never actually did anything about it. It wasn't until I moved here and I had my husband, well, ex now, but at the time he was able to help me with it. So I was like, oh, okay, well, we'll just do this. And again, never expecting it to go beyond that. And it was about a year after where somebody came to me and they're like, I love what you guys are doing. Can I work for you? I'm like, oh, yes. You know, and I came home and Googled, how do I hire an employee? I mean, it was literally like that kind of organic. And then it was, hey, wait a minute. We're not getting calls back. Let me figure out. I bet you other people aren't getting calls back because we were going out of town and looking for somebody to come to our home.
Right.
And I'm like, I bet you other people aren't getting called back. Let me figure out this whole SEO thing. And so it was just accidental. And that's where I got the bug when I figured out I could do this. And, you know, it's a simple concept. It wasn't like we were in some tech company needing to, you know, raise millions of dollars. We were making a lot of money off a very simple concept, but I understood how to sell. I knew what my competitors were doing and I knew how to sell against it. And we just grew that way. So that's when the bug truly hit.
And did you have to invest a lot of your own personal resources to start it up?
No, I'm great at figuring stuff out. So it was, I'll build a website, I'll do all this stuff. So I was able to time resources, yes, for sure, but not a lot of financial resources.
So then you stopped doing that, or did you continue to do that when you started your next business?
I sold that. So we sold that and then, and then I moved on to the next one and then sold that too.
Okay. And so then let's talk about a little bit. You said you thought, you said in typical Erin style, so not my words, your words, you decided, you know what, I've already done this entrepreneurship thing, so it should just kind of land in my lap. I've got an idea. It should appear out of nowhere. When in reality, when we restart things, we do have to go back to the basics, back to the beginning. So talk with me through what was going on your mind then when it wasn't as easy as you thought it would be.
You know, it was frustrating. It's like, I remember the first year at the event. So I had moved from a couple local service-based businesses to an online business, right? Where I was honest, it was called the Starters Club. I was helping people build businesses. I've transitioned it. I still help with content strategy. But it was, I just kind of felt like, well, I've earned my stripes. Like I shouldn't have to explain who I am. Or I know this sounds super cocky now, but looking back on it, it was like, but you know, why do I have to resell myself? Like I've done this before. And when I built the Entrepreneur Summit, specifically the event, I remember people I'd go to these events and they'd be like, well, what are you doing? I'm like, well, I'm building this event. They're like, well, that's cute, you know, and who's funding this? I'm like, well, I am. They're like, well, why would you do this? I'm like, because I want to. Like nobody could understand the concept.
Yeah.
And there's always fun. Oh, go ahead.
Did it cause you to doubt?
Not that part when they're asking me, but the doubt. I thought I would do this and just everybody, I would announce this and tickets would be gone. Yeah. Like I just saw everybody. So when the tickets weren't gone and I actually really had to hustle the sales, that's when I really doubted. That's when I was like frustrated and why don't people see this? And I thought I had enough clout in the Dallas market to be able to sell even to Dallas. But what was interesting, I don't want to call this a male female thing by any means, but I think there was like a couple males who were very like in like the entrepreneur kind of faces, and people, did you get their approval? I'm like, no, I didn't get their approval. Why would I need their approval? So I was getting these weird questions that I never dreamed would come up. Yeah. And that's when I was like, well, this is a lot harder than I thought it was going to be. So yeah.
Interesting that they would ask if you had and the word you used was permission.
Yes.
To start a business. Do you think
to start the event?
You know, in your experience, have you experienced a lot of those types of questions being a female entrepreneur?
I hadn't. I'll be honest with you. I hadn't. And again, it was like I needed their stamp of approval to do what I wanted to do. And so it was the first time I'd ever come across that. It was interesting.
Very interesting. And then you had to deal with some imposter syndrome.
Oh, 100%.
Because then you start to feel like, well, I was successful here. I did this before. And then the next venture isn't as successful. So maybe I'm not as good as I thought I was. I'm going to continue to play the role. But
Yes.
when you're by yourself and you're thinking about it, what were the things that you were telling yourself and how did you overcome them?
Oh God. It was well, and at this whole point, so I got through the first one, and in the second year I was doing it when like it was a much bigger thing. I was turning 40.
Hmm.
And so it was like a cluster of I have screwed up my life.
Hmm.
I have I had left, corporate. So I had screwed up ever having a chance at going back to corporate and having any sort of career, right? That's always your fallback when you go into entrepreneurship. So you're like, and I'm like, no one is ever going to hire me. And so there's that I was putting that in my head, and I'm going to lose all our money.
Yeah.
I'm going to go back to broke. All that, I mean, any negative thought you could ever, and like worst case scenario that you could come to, I came to.
Yeah.
So it was just, I mean, there were moments where I really didn't want to keep going in life in general. It was just so heavy and so weighing. And the problem was too, my poor husband was the only person I really could talk to about it, because to the outside of everyone else, I was quote unquote killing it. So
Yeah.
they were just like, oh my gosh, you've got this amazing event. You've got several hundred people there. You've got these huge names. You are just doing amazing. And I was just dying on the inside, but like, it's great. Everything is fantastic.
What the real financial circumstances were.
Exactly. So then I felt even more like a fraud that I was putting on this great front, yet losing massive amounts of money.
So the fact that you're here talking about it publicly means that you've come to terms with it and you
I
have
have.
talked to people about it and shared your struggles. So how did you overcome the need to put on the fake smile? The need to pretend that you were something that you weren't. How did you overcome that? Because I think for a lot of people dealing with imposter syndrome, dealing with failing businesses, dealing with failing marriages and failing relationships, being honest about
Hmm.
it's really hard. So how did you first start to come out, if you will, about the
Yeah.
scenes?
So I wish I could tell you it was quick. And I
Yeah,
wish I could tell you it was something that, you know, uh, brushed off my knees and jumped right back up. And it
yeah,
wasn't at all. It was honestly years. And it was going back to, through the connections I made.
mhm,
I came back from one more year of the Entrepreneur Summit. I was like, I knew it was physically affecting me. I knew it was, um, uh, I had two kids. They were what, about 4 and 5 at the time. I
mhm,
knew it was taking away from my family time, but I didn't want to go out down, right? So I came back to turn the profit just so I could, but again, in a very shallow sort of way. And then I really went behind the scenes as we built out uh, our podcasting business, and really just focused on the building of it behind the scenes. I
yeah,
was ashamed. I was embarrassed. I was everything. And I had this idea, again, looking back on it, I understand how shallow it sounds, but I just felt like everybody would, I was the top of their mind. Oh, like what a failure that girl is, right? Like that's when in fact no one ever was thinking
I
that.
biggest lies that we tell ourselves is that people are thinking about us when in fact most people are thinking about themselves. Most
Exactly.
around thinking about their own lives, themselves, and will a few people have an opinion? Probably, but even those people are not sitting around thinking about us all day, every day. We're the ones doing it to ourselves.
100%. Yeah. And I mean, and even like for any of like to your point, maybe there are a couple people, but those people that are probably thinking that aren't worth my time or effort. But again, it was really, and it was, I started putting myself out there again, probably like I'd say 6 months ago. I mean, and we're talking a several years span. Now, I was building behind the scenes a company, so I could give myself that, Erin, you do know what you're doing, kind of
Right.
pat on the back, right? And that you do know what you're doing. You can do this. All of that um, wasn't a fluke. The success you had before that, it's because you actually can do this and know what you're doing. And you know, through several years of hard work, got myself way beyond even where I was before the summit happened financially. All of that.
Mhm.
But it was it was a grind. It was a complete grind. And honestly, one of my biggest wake ups was just a few months ago. I was going through, I don't know if you're familiar with the Goldman Sachs 10K program.
I've heard of
It's,
it. Yes.
it's a
Tell
really
the
awesome
listeners about it. Yeah.
What was that?
I said, tell the listeners a little bit about it.
Yeah, so it's a program that Goldman Sachs puts on for business owners, and it's free, but you have to qualify for it. So you have to hit a certain income level, you have to have so many employees, and it is like a 12-week real intensive, almost MBA like, where they walk you through different aspects of your business and building it. And so I was going through that, and we were working on a networking exercise and just looking through our network and working through it. And they were asking, what have you noticed by going through this? And I was like, I've noticed that I've been hiding for the past 4 years. I didn't ask for help. I was humiliated. I was embarrassed. It's another thing. I'm very bad at being honest and asking for help.
Yeah.
And I said, I have amazing contacts that I have just hidden from because A, I didn't know how to come back, and B, it was embarrassing. But even just that amount of honesty, I can't tell you how many people came to me and said, Erin, I was there too. I've been exactly where you are. And I think social media is almost this, if you just hustle hard enough, everybody's killing it, and you're looking at it going, well, why am I not killing it? Like, I'm tired from hustling, and why am I not where I should be? But then you start hearing those true stories, and what looked like it took 10 days, the typical, it took 10 years to become an overnight success. And it's like, you just have to keep your head down and keep going.
Right. And I like that you talk about the grind, because I think a lot of people that want to be entrepreneurs, it's because they don't want to work for somebody. But we don't talk about this a lot. Sometimes it's because they don't want to work. And, I want individual. Tim Ferriss has his book, The 4 Hour Work Week. That's a great idea. But in theory, until you've got it established, until you've built something, entrepreneurship is almost a 24/7 type job. Even when you're eating and sleeping, you're thinking about it, you're planning, you're working in your mind, because if you try to turn it off, one, you pull yourself out of that zone, if you will. But two, the only person you're selling short is yourself. And so I think that real talk is that starting your own business, that running your own business, that being the person who makes the decisions and is in charge takes a lot of work. And that's mental energy, that's research, that's networking. So you talked a little bit about networking. Here's a question for you. You said that you had this great network of people that you hadn't reached out to for help, that you hadn't been honest with. Have you since done that? And what was that like?
Yeah, so I've since started just reaching back out to people and saying, reconnecting. We had and I haven't, I'll be honest with you, I haven't gone into you should, like, it's just, yeah, a lot of people will know, like, I'll say, like, physically, I couldn't do the summit anymore. I needed help. I've had people approach me to redo it again. And I'm like, if you ever want to watch my husband get really nervous, just say the words Entrepreneur Summit. Like, we joke about it, right? But yes, I've told, and it's an interesting conversation we had about this whole topic, because there's moments of vulnerability, right? Where you want to be vulnerable. Like when things were happening to me and everybody's like, you're killing it. I didn't want to be Debbie Downer. I didn't want to say, well, let me tell you about what's really happening behind the scenes. Like, I'm drowning in, debt right now. Like, it's horrible.
Right.
You want to put on that face. And so it's like, how do you create that inner circle of people that you've got to be able to talk about it, but you can't talk about it with everybody. So,
Right.
so I but to your specific question, I have, like, again, not gone into detail, just talked about what I'm working on, getting back. Hey, I would love to reconnect with you. It's been too long, just stuff like that, and reaching back out. And for the people, if they ask, it is what it is at this point. And, I feel very proud of myself to have come back to where I have from where I was. But, it's not so
Powerful
gross.
statement that once you have kind of hit the bottom, which is where you said you were in 2017, and come back, that you recognize what you've done. And you just said, I'm proud of myself. And I think for anybody, sometimes being an entrepreneur means giving yourself permission to fail and being proud of the effort that you put in, because, hey, at least I took the risk. At least I tried, And I think
Exactly.
that's really important. So, oftentimes entrepreneurs think that there is this set path that they have to follow, that they have to do X, Y, Z. We've got to write a business plan. We've got to get a small business loan. Then I have to do this. Then I have to do that. My content should look like this. This is how many people that I should have liking, following, whatever it is. But you've started different businesses and they've all had different paths.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that you and I talked about when we first spoke is really just following your passion. So what does that look like to you?
It's so interesting that the passion thing has always been a word I hated
Yeah.
because it's like, well, and I even have talked about this with other people. It's like, well, I have a lot of passions. B, just because, like, for example, my first business had to deal with animals and pets. If you know me, I am like, I go like this. So I have like, we rescue a ton of dogs. I have dogs all over my office right now. Hopefully they don't bark. I'm very passionate about animals. I love animals. So if that's my passion, and the first business, I loved it. Like there was just this, I loved helping people and loved being around animals.
Yeah.
However, if I've discovered that's my passion, does that mean I have to do it for the rest of my life? You know what I mean? Like, are you stuck with one passion and that's it? And I think there's a understanding of, what do you love to do? And I actually just read a book. It was by Bob Schlegel. It
Mhm.
was Angels and Investors. And it was about sometimes your passion isn't a thing. Like you love this thing, that's what you do. And so that's what you do for the rest of your life. It can be like what you love to uncover. Or so like for me, I love puzzle pieces of like businesses.
Right.
So it can be different verticals. I can have something I love within that vertical. Like right now, I love helping businesses with their strategy and with podcasting. Like I love being able to do that and help them. But it doesn't, again, I can't tell you I'm going to be running a podcast production company in another 3 years. Like
Right.
I've got it to a point where I would like to be able to sell it possibly if it comes up. So I think it's just really important to look and see like what are the things that interest you, but don't get bogged down in, well, I love this, therefore I have to do this. But like do things that are fun to you, do things that interest you, do things that and keep following that, and things just kind of uncover as they go.
Do you think that helps you connect more with your customers and with your network of people?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I think there is so much to being you.
Yeah.
And I think that's where passion is too. Like I said, to know me is like people will come to me if anybody talks about a dog ever. They're like, Erin's your girl. Like, go talk to her. Like, you need
Yeah.
me to find you a dog? I'll find you a dog. Like and so, like that's my connection piece to people. And I truly love that. Right. So we don't need to talk business, but I think there's just so many aspects of just, you get excited about it. You get passionate, to throw that word out, but and to be you and not to say, well, I'm at a networking event, I only need to talk about business right now and I shouldn't be talking about anything outside of it. You're not going to connect as much with people.
Talk with me a little bit about how you network, because you've mentioned this a few different times. And I think it's something that, for people who've been in the corporate world, very often they network with vendors or with their customers. But how, if you're an entrepreneur, do you go out there and meet new people? And how do you do it in a way that builds both a personal relationship and a business relationship with them?
Yeah, it's so funny. I've been doing this for so long. I forgot that I had to figure it out too when I first started. So you've got to, I wouldn't say join 1,000 meetings because you really want quality over quantity.
Okay.
And it's a matter of finding the right groups just start out with either your area, like
Right.
doing local, or B, like going to events in your industry. So both sides of that where you really can, connect with people. And it's not a business card passing out extravaganza. It's truly about meeting people and learning from them. And it's always been, I've found I get more out of it. I know this is cliche, but when I focus on, okay, what exactly do you do? How can I help you in this? How can we, is there an opportunity for us? Yes, partnering. How can we work together type of deal? And really understanding the strategies that you have. Like last night I was at a networking event. I knew a guy who's my quote unquote competitor. And we sat and had a great conversation about, okay, what exactly are you focusing on versus us? Because to the outside, we look like we do the same thing, but I know for a fact we don't.
Mhm.
So it's just really, again, connecting with those people. But I would find a couple good groups that you like and then get involved in those groups. So don't just show up, go home, but like, how can you help them? Um, are they putting on events? Can you help with the putting on events? Can you help with promoting for them? Can you, how can you help this particular organization outside of just showing up as a member? But then how can you really connect with those members? And just, I know a lot of people expect if I show up to something and I don't get clients the next day, it was not worth my time. But I'm telling you, long-term relationships where people will call me like, I met so and so who knows so and so, and they recommended you, and I'm just like, who? I don't even know who you're talking about, but okay, I'll take the.
I come from the corporate sales environment, and one of the things that I used to tell my team was two different things, actually. One is activity breeds activity. So when you do things, when you step out of your comfort zone, when you go outside, when you meet people, you do see results from that. And sometimes you can't track them to that exact event because, to your point, somebody told somebody who told somebody, and it gets back to you, and you may never know that it came from that event, from that connection. But I
Yeah.
think connecting with people is always valuable, and a lot of what we do is online connection, but I think there's still value to that interpersonal meeting somebody. Maybe in COVID we're not shaking their hand anymore, but elbow bumping people and exchanging information and exchanging services and seeing what we can do, because I do see, when I network now, a lot of bartering going on. Hey, can you do this for me and I'll do this for you, and then you get word of mouth contacts that way too.
Yeah.
So you see a lot of that happening. I want to go back to what you said earlier in the show about putting on the fake smile, putting on, this arbitrary, everything is great. And let's talk specifically about women for a minute, because we're really good at that. We're really good
Mm.
at, let's make sure the house looks clean, the kids are spit shined, our hair is perfect, our clothes are great. We're going to make sure that everything looks great when on the inside it's a mess. So can we ever, both as individuals and women, and as business owners, try too hard?
Yeah, I actually just had this conversation. Yes, I 100% think we can try too hard.
Mhm.
We put on this pressure. One of the things I learned, remember when Periscope first came out? Remember
Yeah.
through Twitter? And that whole spontaneous, like, hey, I have an idea, let me go live and talk about it. Like that was one of like the first where we really were able to do that. And I was talking to someone the other day, and because she was like, well, I gotta do videos and I gotta get my makeup done and my hair done. And I'm like, I used to worry about that too. But what was interesting was when I'd go live and I would come in from a run, let's just say it. I'd be like, oh, I have this great thing I need to talk about. Those were my best.
The first time I talked to you, you were at Discount Tire.
Yes. Yeah. So sorry about that. But
It's real life.
exactly. And that, like you got to have a balance where you don't want too much chaotic, but it was that fresh face and that I can make up a word or whatever, and I'm not perfect. And those videos resonated much more with people than the 5-minute video that took me an hour to record because I was so worried about it being perfect. And
Right.
I'm curious what you think about this, because I know we've talked about this, but I think as women, like you have to be careful of oversharing, right? Like being able to, but I was just even listening to, I think it's Glennon Doyle, her book about like, let me just be honest with you here. Like, the mom at the playground, right? Where we're like, everything's great, but it's like, you've got to have a balance, but you've got to find that close circle of other women too, that you can be honest with. Like, I'm having a really hard time right now. I need help. Or let me tell you where it's a judgment-free zone.
Right.
And but I think I do still think you have to be careful with that too.
So I think of us as having circles. So we've got, ourself in the center of the circle. And then if you visualize, right outside of that is a small group of people who we talk to about everything. The kid throwing up in the car, the marriage that's going south, the medical scare, literally everything. We talk to them about everything. They know when we're broke, they know when we've got money. These are the people that know us nearly as well as we know ourselves. In that circle is, right there on the edge between ourselves and that circle is a spouse or a significant other. But these tend to be your closest friends. For me, those friends are usually people that I've known for a long time. And when I say a long time, I mean, my friends from middle school that I'm still friends with, that we have grown up together. We knew how we grew up, and we share really everything. Then I think outside of that, we have our second closest friends. And these are the people who maybe are in our book group, maybe are in a mastermind group with us, maybe are even possibly, if you're religious, in a church group with you, the people that you talk to about real issues, but not the nitty gritty of those issues. Maybe they know that your marriage is, in trouble, but they don't know the details of why. So that's kind of that group. Then I think we have outside of that our acquaintances. These
Mm-hmm.
are the people that, your neighbor, for example, they talk, they know about your kids, they know where you're going on vacation, but they don't know the intricacies of your life. And then at the far outside of that are your business peers and business colleagues. And in my own experience, I've learned that there's big risk, especially if you come from a corporate environment, in letting those business colleagues into the inner circles if you're still in that situation. And I know a lot of people will disagree with that, but in my experience, I think that business circle, there's a reason that they're in that business circle. And in order to maintain some level of professionalism, especially if you're talking about employees and things like that, you do need to have boundaries there and decide what you're going to share with them, what you're not. That's somebody, I talked about having, issues in your marriage. They may know when you filed for divorce, but they didn't know leading up to it what was going on, because you do have to maintain, again, some separation between your personal life and your professional life. So, can you be friends with people that you work with? Absolutely. But they're not going to be your inner circle level of friends. They're going to be the people that you talk with about big ideas, maybe politics, maybe how you're getting things done, but they stay in that circle. And then I think the same thing goes with the people on the inside. Are they the people that you do business with? And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes yes, but you have to be willing to know you could lose that relationship if you were to go into a large business arrangement with somebody that you're that close to, and really considering the weight of that. So, as I mentioned, on that inner circle, you might have your spouse. Going into business with your spouse sounds great, unless, a few years down the road, something happens and now you've got business issues and marital issues. It's causing issues with your friendships, with your whole network. So, I think it's, a really good exercise for people. And I coach people to draw the circles on a piece of
Mm-hmm.
and write who is in each level of the circle and how close they are to you. And then if somebody's kind of on the line, ask yourself, where do I want them to be? What's the best decision for me to make? And does it sound selfish? A little bit, but I think that we should make intentional decisions about who we have those kinds of relationships with, and look at the big picture and the long-term picture. Sometimes people who have been on the inner circle, who you've been friends with forever, may not be good for you anymore, and they may need to move out. And then sometimes people who were part of your larger network, you get closer to them and you realize this is a person I really connect with, and they move in. But I think making intentional decisions, and I hate to say this, but especially for women, thinking, cognizantly about who's close to us, who knows my secrets, who knows about my relationships, who knows about my business. It's not, I don't think it's selfish. I think it's protective, and that's okay to be protective of your business and your life.
Yeah, I like
What
that.
what are your thoughts?
I would agree. I think I like the intention behind it though too. I've never, to be honest with you, sat down and like listed out the people who would be in within circles. And I like that perspective of it to say, these are people I feel like, yeah, you know what, I can talk about this with. And yeah, definitely be careful of friends in business. I can speak to that for sure.
Yeah, and I think most people can. And it's nice to have this, rosy view of this is my best friend and she and I are going to go into business together, but there need to be boundaries and clear expectations and things like that. And a lot of people don't think that. You hear lots of women, we went into business together and everything is great. And again, that's the front that you see, but I'm always curious what's going on under the surface there. What's really going on. So,
Exactly.
So let's talk a little bit about as we get closer to the end of our time together. One of the things that you said to me that was really, really powerful is that you don't have to recreate your past to build your future. And the different businesses that you've operated have all been in different industries, servicing different types of clients. And so you've built a lot of different things. Do you think that our tendency is to do what we already know and try to recreate that?
It drives me nuts. Yes, because it's already know, or like we get stuck in an industry. Like I was just talking, we just were having this conversation a couple months ago where it was like, okay, so a bank won't loan to you if you go, like they're going to loan to you if you've been in the restaurant business for 25 years and are going to come out and build another restaurant. Then it's appealing, right? But if you've been in the restaurant business for 25 years and you want to build a flower boutique or something, they're like, no, you don't know that, right? So it becomes harder, not to say never. And I hate that not only do we put those limitations on ourselves, but the limitations are put on us all around us too, where it's not, again, it's not impossible, but it just makes it a much harder path to go down when you're not on the straight and narrow. And to me, it feels very depressing to go into something when you're 20 and then be stuck in that for the rest of your life. So I think it is important to explore other avenues and other things. Like, I've explored, I love baking as an example, and I went to really expensive cake decorating classes and I loved it, but I also realized I don't love it enough to create a business around it, right? But
Right.
I'm constantly exploring those, to your point of I tried it. I always do kind of the value, like where I'm like, okay, I'm scared to do this, which is a good or bad. Like, am I scared enough that, am I standing on a ledge where the fear is telling me to get back, or the fear is telling me to, there's something beyond that. And then I do if I'm on my deathbed and I look back at this moment, will I regret never trying it?
Yes, I love
Or
to do that too. Mhm.
so that's where I've like, there's been, like I said, there's been things where I'm like, it's not for me. And I'm okay walking away from that. But like the event business, I have no regrets about it at all. I put in my all, I turned the profit. I did what I was supposed to. I went for big names. I did everything I did, even though it was really hard. I knew that if I never did it, I would always be kicking myself over it. Right. And
Right.
so,
Really great question for everybody to ask themselves, not just about business or entrepreneurship, but just in life. If I don't try this, if I don't step out of my comfort zone, is this something that I will look back on and regret not having done? And I think, to add to that, is this something I will regret not having done now? Because very often,
yeah,
what, I'm going to do that when I retire. I'm going to do that 2 years from now. I'm going to do that when my son graduates. I'm going to do that when. What if when doesn't come?
so
Or what
true.
if when comes, you're not able to do it? So, I think if you have the ability to take a risk and you think that in the future you might regret not having done it, just do it. We get this one life. We might as well live it.
I agree. I agree.
All right. So, talk to me about a time when you did that or one of your clients did that, somebody that you've helped.
Oh, well, I'll tell you. So here's what's so interesting. Like I said, for Innovation Media, we do podcast production. And here
Right.
is what is so insane to me is every single person, I'll maybe a couple, but in general, almost every single person that comes into our studio that wants to record a podcast or put themselves out there, uh, and I'm talking people who have the credentials beyond credentials, and not to say you have to have X amount in order to do a podcast, but I can't tell you how many people are, well, who am I to start the podcast? Who am I to say, talk
Right.
about this or do this? Like, there's other people who talk about this, or there's like, who am I? And it's so crazy to me um, how many people want to, but they never do because that whole who am I question is
Right.
in their head. And then it's those people. And I remember too, like, when I first did my podcast, actually, I just saw the post today. It was 8 years ago. My very first podcast was 8 years ago. And I remember I always thought I was crazy. I was the only one who ever doubted myself, right?
Yeah.
Like I figured I'm the only one who ever doubts myself of I can do this or I should do this or I'm capable. And what I learned is every single person has that. The people that you see that are successful are the people who said, I hear you, but I'm going to do it anyway. Or I'm going to regret this if I don't do it. Or I'm going to jump in. And not to say, again, their path wasn't hard, but you're not going to get there until you turn this off. And
Yeah.
so being able to, it's a simple, like, who are you to do? You're very important to do this. Do you understand? Like, if we all use that same theory, there is no one out there right now that should be teaching weight loss, because we have enough understanding of how to lose weight. We should be done with that by now. So no one should ever be creating content, yet people create content every day around it, and they're still helping people with it. So yeah, you just got to jump in and go.
So I just recently read a book called Illogical by Emmanuel Acho. I don't know if you've heard of him.
I'm writing this
He
down.
he actually, so the book is the same premise. It's, you know what, he was a professional football player and got cut from the team and decided he wanted to be the voice for Black Americans. So he started having these conversations called Conversations with a Black Man, and he wrote a book about that. And he, in Illogical, which is his second book, he talks about his struggle with, should I be doing this? Who am I to be having these conversations? And throughout the book, he encourages the readers to stop asking yourself that question. And instead of saying, why me? Why should I do this? Ask yourself, why not me? Why would I not be the one to do this? Because I think all of us, if we have that bug to give our voice to the world, then there's something that we have to say. And if there's something we have to say, there's something that can be heard. And for me personally, if only one person listens to this show and does our circle activity or takes a risk that they were planning on waiting until when to do, then we've done something here and we've changed the lives of somebody who's going to hear this and make a different step. And the trajectory of their life is going to go a different way. And again, the title of the book is Illogical, because very often we try to find this logical path. Well, I'm supposed to go to high school, graduate, go to college, get a degree in XYZ, work in the corporate world, get married, have 2.5 kids, a dog, a partridge, and a pear tree, retire at XYZ, and die. And that's the path that we have all, been kind of told this is what you're supposed to do. But to your point, what we're supposed to do can change, and where we're supposed to be can change. And I think that we are all incredibly lucky to be living in this time and this place where we have that ability. You mentioned the cake baking activity that you did, and it made me think about the time when apprenticeships were normal, right?
Yes.
From the time you were born, you were going to be a carpenter, you were going to be a cobbler or a baker or whatever. And your station in life was set. You became an expert at that one thing. And that's what you did until you died. And then you passed it on to your children. But how lucky are we now to live in this time and this place where if you want to be a baker, great. If you want to be a cobbler, great. If you want to set up an internet empire, great. Whatever it is that you want to do, the options are out there if you're brave enough to take the risk and seize those opportunities. So,
Yeah.
one of the things you and I talked about in our first conversation is, do we ever stop learning? So you've had successful businesses, you've sold them. Are you still learning?
Oh my God. Yeah. So, oh my God, like, I still don't know half what I need to know, but that's what's awesome about it. Just the books and all of that. But I want to go back to, because I know this is for women, and I want to talk about, just the who am I part too. I
Yeah.
always had, I think corporate trains us. Like, if you come from corporate, we're trained that you work hard and then somebody's going to come tap you on the shoulder and give you the right to move to the next level, right? Like, you impress them enough.
Yes.
And I always thought that, like, as I was an entrepreneur, I'm like, well, where's my shoulder tap? Like, like, I want to step in as a thought leader. I want to step in and help people to do this. So in order for that, I need wherever the shoulder tap comes from to come tap me, and so to, allow me to do this. And I think when we learn we're our own shoulder, like, we are the ones who have the right to shoulder tap ourselves and put our, to stay up there, to go out there and put our name out there and to lead whatever that is. Like you said, maybe it's 3 people, but I know they may be struggling with this and I want to help them with that, or whatever it is. We've got to understand it's up to us, not who's ever going to tap. It was such an important lesson for me. Unfortunately, I didn't get it till I was 40, almost 40. So
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Hopefully somebody younger hears this and doesn't happen. I wish I could give credit to the article that I read recently, but I recently read an article that said if you want to get promoted or if you want to make more money, the best way to do that is to leave your existing company if you're in the corporate world. Because once you're in that corporate world, you very often get pigeonholed into one role and your potential gets overlooked. But this is why you see millennials and younger generations job hopping a lot more frequently. You
Yes.
know, parents' generation stayed in their jobs their whole life. I mean, the goal, right, is to work there for 30 years and get the watch and retire. But, my generation tends to be at jobs 5 to 10 years, whereas you see the younger millennial generation staying at their job for 5 years or less, sometimes just 1 to 2 before they change. And very often it's because they're not getting that recognition. But I like what you said, taking it a step further and giving ourselves permission to grow, giving
Mm-hmm.
ourselves permission to move to the next step, for learning the next thing, and for declaring ourselves what we are, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And you don't
And
want the title to be given to you by somebody at your company. You can earn that title and give it to yourself.
100%. And to your point of learning, like I always have several books that I'm reading. And my husband and I were just having this conversation because there's an app. I can't remember the name of the app. I got an ad for it and I sent it to him. But it was like where it breaks down books and helps with the actionable items from the books. Cause that's my problem is I'll read a book and and then I'm like, oh, there's like 20 things I need to do to apply this book to my life. But I mean, I am always, always, always learning. And to the point of my first business, I had the hiring thing down really well. I had the delegating thing down really well. I had it down. And even switching to a different business, to a different vertical, I had to relearn how to do all of that again, right? Like, okay, I've got it down in a in-person service-based business. Well, now how do I do this 15 years later? There's different things that different software, different, all these things that allow me to do this differently. So how do I navigate that? So I will never say I know it all, because like I said, it's constant tweaking, it's constant learning.
For myself, what I've learned the older I've gotten, and I just turned 40, is how much I don't know.
Yes.
When I was 20, I thought I knew everything. I was ready to manage everybody and take on the world. And now that I'm 40, I realize how much I don't know, how much more there is to know. And, I won't say I'm a wise person, but I think that's the beginning of acquiring wisdom, is realizing how much you really don't know and being open to learning it and being comfortable saying, great question, I don't know, you
Yes.
know?
Yeah.
Um, so today, tell me what you're doing today and what success looks like for you today.
Oh, so like I said, we've got the innovation media where we do podcast production with Erin Gregor. I do a lot of content strategy, help people. We're going to be building a whole online program and membership to that of people who aren't ready for production.
Yeah.
What's funny though, success is not about, so I call it the orange dot, and I've read about this before too, where you feel like you're going to hit certain milestones and then all in the world becomes right? Like you're going to hit certain financial milestones. I've hit the financial milestones that I've always aspired to, and nothing happens. Like this little thing does it where you're like, oh, that it's all good now. Like you're always constantly, okay, well, I don't feel safe now. I got to move to that.
Because
So
wherever
my,
you go, there you are. You've heard this before, right?
yes. So success to me is all about freedom. Like I was just having this conversation with somebody last night. It's like, I'm tired.
Mm.
I don't care. I want to be able to hire the right people, connect and build businesses, but not do it all myself. And if that means less money, I'm okay with that. Like I'm good. And really finding that time. I have a 10 and 9-year-old. So success for me is being able to travel with them. We partial homeschool, which I feel is the best of both worlds. They go to school 2 days a week. We homeschool 3 days a week. Sometimes it's very hard. Sometimes it works well. But to being able to continue to live life on my terms,
Yeah.
That is success to me. That is 100% success. Whether it's let's go out of town for a week, let's let me take the day off so we can go here. I don't want to build a business and they graduate and I look back and we're strangers because I built a really cool business, but wasn't a great mom. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's success to me.
In your life.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And this is part of it, but so too are the kids, and so too are the experiences and the learning and the vacations and all of that.
Yeah. And
And
just
like I
sleep
said,
8 hours a night.
yeah, 6 hours a night. So yeah, for sure. I think as we get older, that's something that we learn too. I don't know who, if you're 20 years old and you're listening to this, listen, you need sleep. Okay.
Yeah, I don't have a stamina. Caffeine does mean nothing anymore.
Right, right. All right. So, what is the big message that you want our listeners to walk away with today?
The big one is, even in the darkest times, it's this too shall pass. Like, I heard a great riddle, but it's like, things will pass. Whether, we know that even if you're on a cloud nine, right? Cloud nine and you're super high, it's going to pass, but we brace for that, right? We're like bracing. Oh, something's going to happen here. We can't be in this great thing forever. But also when we're in the valley, this too shall pass. And I know focusing, you can't control everything, and that I like to control things. But what are the things you can control? So you're in this lull, but all right, can I make a couple phone calls today? Is that something I can do? Can I call some potential clients? Can I put out some content? Can I do something? Can I over deliver on a customer I'm working with right now? What are those tiny things that I can control in this moment? And those are business focused. And when you focus on those things and just day in and day out, again, it will pass. But for me, it was just that spinning cycle of it's all going to fall apart, and
Right.
it was detrimental.
Yeah. But you were able to pull yourself out of it.
I was.
Because it passed.
It passed.
It passed. So that's your message to people: is this too shall pass, be it good, bad, or otherwise. Time is going to move forward, and it's what we do with today and the next day and the next day and this minute and this hour that's going to define how the time passes.
Exactly.
Love it. Love it. So tell me how the listeners can get in touch with you. Tell us a little bit, restate your name, the name of the
Yes.
business, and how can the listeners get in touch with you?
So just the umbrella, the perfect way to get a hold of me, get a hold of me is eringregor.com. Just as it sounds, Erin, Gregor, .com. You can head over there. Erin S. Gregor. I was formerly Erin Smith for many years. So Erin S. Gregor is where you can find me all over social. But if you need some help with content, with strategy, or if you're going through a bad time too, and you just need somebody to bounce ideas off of, reach out. Would love to connect.
Okay, wonderful. Well, thanks so much for coming on the show. I am, sad to hear about your 2017, but here we are in 2022. You have rebuilt. You're stronger than ever. Great outlook. And I'm so glad that the listeners got to hear your story. So thanks so much, and talk to you soon.
Thank you for having me.
Mm-hmm.